I was looking at Facebook last night on my phone. I don't get on Facebook much, but every now and then, like when I'm watching a ball game. Although the ending was pretty exciting. Who stayed up and watched the ending of the ball game last night? That was a crazy. For those of you that don't know, that the Cardinals won on an interference call. I mean, this was unprecedented. They'll be talking about this for a long time. So that trip coming around third base, or tripped over the third baseman, and they called the third baseman for interference, so the run scored, and they won. But anyway, I was watching the little reading Facebook, and there's some groups and things I like to follow. One of those is United Methodist Clergy. That's a closed group, and I read people bring issues to the fore, and the question was, we have a policy in our church that we do not move the altar table for weddings. And the worship committee wants to know if it's okay to move it for the Christmas pageant. And there were a couple hundred, well, at least 80 and people arguing back and forth, the validity of and of course someone did raise the issue. Now I'm confused because it's usually an altar or a communion table, and are you talking about the communion table or the altar, or and there really wasn't any clarity there, and people were, this people will do this, and people will know you gotta move, I don't care what, there's all these arguments. My comment, and of course the question was, what should I do? And my comment was, don't make stupid rules. Which I realized was probably a little caustic. So I wrote another response, which was, by all means, don't move it, because the placement of the communion table is much more important than celebrating the birth of Christ. Then I realized that was probably sarcastic. So, and sometimes that doesn't work well on Facebook. People think you're serious. So then I had to write, folks, it's Reformation Sunday. And the most troubling thing we have to talk about this week is whether or not we should move the communion table for the Christmas pageant. I mean, really, come on. With all that is facing the church, especially in America, we're worried about whether or not we ought to move the table. I mean, that really is kind of like moving the deck chairs on the Titanic. I mean, we've got problems all across, not just in the Methodist Church, but all across American Christianity. We are in this stage of flux that we don't know where we'll end up on the other side of it. Now, it's not near what we faced 500 years ago, when Luther started his little thing, and all of a sudden the German princes got a hold of it, and they decided to separate themselves from the Holy Roman Empire and the Catholic Church, and literally, and this is where the term was coined, all hell broke loose, because, a third of the population of Europe died in the next 100 years because of the wars and the plagues and everything that came from the wars. It was a mess. And, I think we can probably avoid that this time around. But it's still going to be messy because things are changing. There are a lot of giants out there. And we don't know what it's going to be quite like yet when we get in the promised land. You can name some of those giants. Like, how do you get folks that are so busy they don't know which end is up to be a part of the church? How do you get young people to be part of the church? How do you deal with worship? How do you make it attractive to these people and those people and those people and those people school. And if somebody could come up with that solution, they'd be real popular in church circles. We all know the issues. We all hope for and look for the answers. This whole process that we're involved in this Vital Church initiative is an attempt to help us find the answers and to support us in that effort and to equip us with the ability to make those decisions and make those changes and find those answers. Part of what we're doing in our weekly studies right now is looking at it more in depth. Search for those answers. It would be nice to do the same thing we did in the 1950s and everything would be fine. But, you know, if you go into today's job market with skills from the 1950s, how far will you get? I can't tell you. I don't know anything about computers. You don't get far. And the same realities face the church. The word is the same. The message is the same. How it's delivered constantly changes. Think about Luther's time in the Reformation. It was the printing press that revolutionized life. And now, maybe in much the same way the internet is redoing that again. We don't even know where it's leading us yet. And that's a little scary, isn't it? It's a lot scarier not to quite know where we're headed. Just like those folks staring at the border of the promised land, and it was scary. They didn't know which direction to turn. Whether to go back to Egypt, that didn't seem like a real bright idea. Or to go into the land, or to wait. And they had a big decision to make. For us, it really is a decision of who we want to be. On one end of the spectrum of any organization, on one end of the spectrum you have the country club, the private members only, we only want people that look like us, smell like us, talk like us, think the same way we do. And then over here you have a service organization that's really dedicated to helping others. And if you, as a church, err in one direction or the other too far, you quit being a church. It's nice to be a country club, but that gets kind of exclusive. It doesn't allow people with different ideas or to look different or talk different. And on the other end, this is really good, but it doesn't provide the sense of belonging or the fellowship that you really need. And in the middle somewhere is a faith community. A place where we do have some sense of belonging and know people and yet some of them are challenging. We don't always agree with them, but we have a common cause. It's that spiritually mature Christian caring community that is our mission to create, because then that allows us to do those things in service to our community and calls us to grow and mature in our faith and in our spirituality. That's what we're about, is finding that middle ground. And when we catch ourselves, like, not moving the altar table, that's kind of fallen into that country club thing a little too far. Not even knowing where the altar table is kind of fallen into that service organization a little too far. There's got to be that balance. And if we stay true to that, The rest will take care of itself. Because God is there. I know these are hard words. The verse you didn't read, the very next verse, the very next verse after what the reading is, after Caleb and rend their clothes and say, invade the land, it'll be okay. God is with us. The very next verse says the people gathered stones to kill them. Hear that? What did the Israelites end up doing? Did they go into the land? No. They wandered around the desert for another 40 years. You can do that. We can do that. We can wander around for another 40 years. All of us will be gone. There won't be anybody here to replace it. But we can do that. That's kind of scary, isn't it? The thing is, even though they wandered around for 40 years, their descendants went into the land. Whether or not this local congregation goes into the promised land is up to us. But God's people will go into the promised land in this community, one way or another, whether it includes us or not. If there's a lesson from Numbers and from the Exodus, it's clearly that. The church will thrive. Whether or not we're part of it, a part of what happens, that's up to us. Whether or not we believe we can overcome those giants. Whether or not we believe that David really took one out with a rock. Whether or not we believe that there are no giants when God's involved. It's up to us. Whether or not we want to go into the promised land or wait around, let somebody else